Welcome to The Launch, the podcast sponsored by TandemLaunch, where we talk about tech, startups, entrepreneurship, and everything in between. We give you the inside scoop on building a startup, capital fundraising, the entrepreneurial journey, with both funny and impactful stories. This podcast is for budding entrepreneurs, ecosystem players, industry folks, venture capitalists looking for deals, students considering a career in the startup world, or anyone with a curiosity in deep tech. If you have a research background in tech and always wanted to build your own startup, then check out our website, www.TandemLaunch.com, or hit us up on LinkedIn. Let's build the future together. And now, on with the show. So welcome everyone to another episode of The Launch podcast sponsored by TandemLaunch. I'm your host, Bobbi Bidochka, and today joining me are the founders of one of TandemLaunch's incubated companies, LATYS. So please welcome Artmiz, Golkaramnay, and Gursimiran, Sethi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
So let's begin with a bit of background. So Artmiz, let's start with you. Tell us a bit about yourself and how you ended up TandemLaunch.
Of course. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having us on the launch, Bobbi. And so I am a electrical and computer engineering graduate, both master's and bachelor's. And the reason I ended up at TandemLaunch was because I wanted to build my own company in a decade or two. And I thought, now that I have some time on my hand, there's this entrepreneurship training program. Let me give it a try and see if I can learn something from it before I go into the industry and start learning what I need to learn. That's exactly why I went through the entrepreneurship training program. And then while I was in the program, I learned that there's actually opportunities to start building a company right off the bat with TandemLaunch. And so I decided to give it a try.
Great. Gursimiran, over to you.
Thanks, Bobbi, for having us here. It's an absolute pleasure. So I had an unconventional journey at TandemLaunch. I joined the LATYS venture as it was, still in its infancy. But then I directly joined as a co-founder. And I've always wanted to start something of my own. I'll get to a few examples of when I actually have tried a few times and failed. But then I was always under the impression that I had to have capital, I had to have experience, I had to have an idea. And somehow those theories were true, but yet also proven false as I made my journey through TandemLaunch. And so, I'm also an electrical and computer engineering grad. I graduated from the University of Toronto, worked at Apple for a year, worked at a startup company in Toronto for another 7 months, figured out that I could do that better than what was being done there, and decided to come up here in Montreal and founded LATYS with Artmiz.
Amazing. Yeah, it is true. People think, and rightfully so, okay, I'm going to graduate. My choices are stay in academia and become a researcher, or leave academia and join industry, or start my own company. And they don't realize there's actually a fourth option where you could still start your own company, but, not necessarily with your own idea. Because there's some people that are just so great, but they don't have like that magical idea. But that's what TandemLaunch comes in. So we've got the ideas here. Okay, great. So then, so that's a great segue actually to my next question, because I do hear a lot from aspiring entrepreneurs that they think that they have to go to industry for a few years and like it's critical before that they can start their own thing. So what are your thoughts on that?
This question can really manifest itself I guess, because I came directly from academia. So right after I graduated from my master's degree, I came across the program that I was talking about, the entrepreneurship training program that TandemLaunch had. And so I joined TandemLaunch right after that. And for me, it was more that I would need decades of experience in the industry before I could start my own company. So I guess I was one of those people that talked to you, Bobbi, and ask you that question. And maybe it would make a lot of things easier if you want to start your own company on your own, if you learned a bunch of things, whether on the technical side or on the management side and all of that. But what I've found so far is that I don't need to make a lot of the same mistakes myself. I can learn from other people's mistakes. And that's where TandemLaunch came in for me. So I have these regular mentorship sessions with the core team members at TandemLaunch, and I can kind of learn from what other ventures have done, what those individuals themselves have done in their previous ventures, and so I can kind of learn from that collective wisdom that everyone has. And then from a technical perspective, having more experience on the technical side, I don't think I'm really missing out from the industry because when you're building your own company, especially at the beginning, when it's just two of you, everyone needs to take care of everything. Like you wear so many hats that you just gain so much experience that I don't know if I would have gained this much experience if I went into the industry in the first year at least. Like I feel like I have maybe 5 years of experience at this point, even though it's just been about a year. So yeah, there's my answer for that.
Maybe I can add a bit to that. So I think research experience is almost like work experience. Both Artmiz and I went through a research intensive degree. And as you go through that, you're basically working full time. I would even consider that working two jobs because I was clearly working 70, 80 hours a week at the end of my program. And then I did go into some industrial jobs basically, and I did pick up a lot of important things there. But in my opinion, if you come in with zero experience, I think that is a blank slate, and so you can start afresh. You don't have any industrial baggage of how things should be done. You're more open to learning new things. So I think having this maybe 1 or 2 years of experience did help me a lot in the technology perspective, but it was good because I didn't have all that baggage when we were interviewing a few candidates, that these people seem to be so set in their views that learning new things on a breakneck pace becomes harder, actually.
Yeah, setting your views is quite antithetical to the startup world, that's for sure. So speaking of startups, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about LATYS? What's going on there?
So what we're basically building are smart antennas. We're trying to, we actually do have a new antenna design that is very different from anything that's already existed in the industry. There has been work done on it at the academic level, which is actually where our technology comes from, is from the University of Toronto, work that was done there, actually in the same group that Gursimiran is from at University of Toronto. And so basically what everybody knows from antennas is that they kind of listen in the same direction that they speak in, and it's not just the direction that they're sending and transmitting in is the same, but also all the other properties of the signal that's being transmitted and received are the exact same. But what we have in our new antenna design is that these two can be completely different. So there is some similar work that you could think of where they would kind of look at either the transmit or the receive signal and kind of divide it into two, and then say, we'll deal with one of it in one direction, we'll deal with the other one in the other direction, or different frequencies or at different times. But with our technology, we actually have two completely separate signals. And so that's why we can give either the transmit or the receive totally different properties. And so that opens up a lot of new ways for us to deal with any kind of signal. And that's what's actually really exciting about our technology, is that it's agnostic to the protocol and the modulation scheme that's being used. So as long as the surfaces that we have, the antennas that we have, are designed for a certain frequency, you can use them whether it's a Wi-Fi protocol or a cellular. So yeah.
So Artmiz, you alluded to us being able to communicate at the same time at the same frequency, and that's enabled by our crown jewel, which is non-reciprocity. So non-reciprocity is the ability of an antenna to, as you mentioned, listen in one direction and then transmit in the other direction. So this is a fundamental paradigm shift that LATYS brings to antenna design. We basically, reciprocity is a direct function of the time time reciprocity. That's a manifestation of the Maxwell's equations. And so these are antennas that have been engineered to manipulate the incident radiation on them and then redirect them where they're needed, and only on the directionality as we need them for. So if we only want transmit signals to go and not the receive ones, we are able to suppress that interference in real time with physical level repeaters, essentially. So yeah, and we've gained a lot of traction in, especially in 5G, in industrial automation and IIoT. That's where this new paradigm is being picked up and is creating more wireless efficiency.
So if you were going to explain this to, say, maybe not a 5-year-old, but a Bobbi-year-old, so what's a use case that I might understand, or a client, like let's say your ideal client would be so and so, and they would put this here, and that would have an effect on me in what way?
Okay, so maybe I can try to explain this in the Wi-Fi frequency range, which you and everybody else listening or watching has a lot of experience with. So Wi-Fi routers will usually broadcast signals in all directions in space. So you put a Wi-Fi router down in your living room and you have a signal, whether you're upstairs or in, across the living room, anywhere you are. But what we have in mind is that with our beam directionality and a bunch of other properties that we have, I won't get too technical because I'm explaining this to a Bobbi-year-old. I don't know how old Bobbi would be to that the beam would know where you are and it would follow you directly around. And so that's one of the things that our technology can do. Another thing is that you can dedicate an area to it. For example, let's say you're in your office and you place your desk by the window and you know that your desk is going to be there and you want very good Wi-Fi connection around your desk. So you would make that a hot zone. And but you don't want, for example, the nursery, the next room over, to have any kind of Wi-Fi signal going to it. And so you can make that a quiet zone, that type of thing. It's not exactly like I explained it, but this would kind of be a use case that you could think of at home. Now, what we have in mind for LATYS, at least for the initial products, is for it to be used, like Gursimiran was mentioning, mostly in industrial IoT, Industry 4.0. But this would kind of be an example if it were to be used at home.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Now I kind of get it. So instead of it sort of being ambient, it's like very specific to where it's going to go. And I see that makes it more efficient. So that's amazing.
And stronger. Yeah.
And stronger. Yes. So Gursimiran, you brought up 5G. Can we talk a bit about the hysteria surrounding 5G and like, what is this all about and why are people so concerned about it?
Yeah, the reason people are concerned about it is actually on the scientific community themselves. I feel like communication is an important part of being a good scientist, to be able to convey your ideas simply and in a way that will be understood by people is important. And I think the hysteria, COVID aside, I would put that into the conspiracy camp. But even before that, there was a lot of hysteria on radiation and how that could affect. And there are certain studies that show that there could be some potential issues. But then these are not communicated well. And some of this data is cherry picked by some websites that are trying to proliferate scientific misknowledge, I guess. And so it is then the onus lies on the academic community and us as well, the technology community, to actually communicate these ideas in such a way that it does not create that hysteria. And so I think at LATYS, we're trying to do that as much as we can by giving you examples of listening and hearing at the same time, of maybe highways of communication, traffic highways. So I think that the biggest concern is radiation, and maybe I can help dispel some of that. Ionic radiation is the radiation that is able to knock off electrons off of your DNA. That happens at X-rays, very, very, very high frequencies. The frequencies that 5G plans to operate on is a few gigahertz higher than what we already use. And so that will not affect your DNA. What it could do in the very long run is if you keep your phone against your heads. And I worked at Apple myself. We do extensive testing of human heads and models and how to optimize the performance of these. And a lot of these things are kind of hidden behind iron curtains. And so I think, again, the onus is on us as technologists to spread information and not misinformation.
Great. Okay, good. I mean, it just seemed a bit odd because, like, okay, we went from, I don't know if we started at 1G, but I remember they had 3G, 4G, and suddenly 5G. Oh my God. I'm like, but what was wrong with the other Gs? And how bad could that be? Yeah, it was a bit of a.
Just a quick note that those Gs don't stand for giga, they stand for generation. So there was a first generation of wireless communication, and now we're at the fifth generation of wireless communication. The Gs don't actually, in their name, tell you what frequency that wireless communication is happening at, what part of the spectrum. But the plan for 5G is to have a section of it in the sub 6 gigahertz range, and then in the higher frequency range. But that you actually pointed to something really valuable, and that is that we use terminology that kind of makes sense to us because those of us that know the acronyms, but then we don't explain it well. Like we say 5G, and then we mean fifth generation, but we don't say it. And maybe some people think it means 5 gigahertz, or maybe they think that it means 5 gigabytes. Who knows? So we need to get better at that. All of us, the academics, and industry, everyone.
Yeah, because then people tend to fill in the gaps, and when people are left to fill in the gaps, well, more often than not, they fill them in incorrect and often like erroneous kinds of ways. So then, so let's move the conversation a little bit more towards the RF vertical. So in your opinions and what you've observed, what are the latest advances and where does LATYS fit on that spectrum? Pun on purpose.
Right. So there are different chains in the RF ecosystem. There is the baseband, which is the processing or the computers part of, or chips part of the wireless chain. Then there is the front ends, the RF front ends. And then there's antennas. So far, all the innovation has happened in the first two camps. So the chips, the basebands, the RF front ends, a lot of information, a lot of attention has been on this sector. Antennas have always been thought of these dumb parasitic components that suck energy out of the system. At LATYS, we are hoping that you will rethink that paradigm. We are incorporating a lot of active components and a lot of processing that would go into the radio basebands, but on the antenna level, which is why we're called LATYS Intelligence. We're bringing intelligence to antennas so that these physical layer repeaters can be deployed in already existing systems and the systems of the future. So, Artmiz, do you wanna talk more about how we're bringing intelligence to the antennas?
Yeah, we had this question one time that we said we're bringing intelligence to the antennas, and we got stopped right at the beginning of our pitch saying, "What do you mean? What kind of intelligence? How are your antennas smart?" So, like Gursimiran mentioned, we're actually bringing intelligence to them by giving them a more know-how from the radio level without technically adding every single component that is at the radio level. We're kind of giving them the properties, these properties that are embedded into the antenna without specifically adding those components into the antenna. And so, and from the kind of a way that we're designing these antennas, they will be intelligent because, like I was mentioning, they will know where you are and follow you around as you're moving around. So there's that aspect of it as well. But to go back to your original question about where RF is going and where do we see ourselves in there? So the two big things that are happening right now with RF are 5G and IoT, and we've heard those two terms for a while now. They were supposed to be deployed, in 2019, and then 2020 and then 2023, and now we're expecting them for 5G to be fully rolled out by 2027. And so we want to be part of that ecosystem. We want to be a solution, an enabling product, an enabling technology into both of those spaces: industrial IoT, which, by the way, for anyone listening or watching doesn't know what that is, they're basically what we can use to connect a bunch of different devices that are technically considered smart. These could be thermostats that you have at home. They could be your phone, any smart speakers you have at home. So all of these being connected, they would make an IoT network. And so these could also have applications in the industry, for example, a smart factory, fully automated smart factory. And then we also have 5G, which, as we discussed, is the 5th generation of wireless communication, cellular communication. And then there's a hybrid of these two. So 5G, kind of small cell, private 5G that Industry 4.0 will be gearing towards. And we want to be part of all of it.
I want that for you too.
Thank you. So our protocol and modulation agnostic products will actually allow us to be part of all of that, because we don't necessarily care what kind of packet is being sent. Our repeaters can actually make any kind of signal stronger and more efficient because we work at the physical layer.
Okay, so for our folks at home, and maybe this is a bit of an off-topic question, but why would I want all of my devices connected? How does that benefit my life if my smart fridge and my cell phone and my thermostat are all connected?
That's a really good question. Why would you? Why would you let social media have access to all of your data? I think, at least for a regular consumer, a lot of it comes down to convenience. What data they can gather from you can kind of tailor advertisements to you, or if you don't need to open your fridge and see that you need to buy milk and your fridge orders it for you, maybe that's more convenient, or your thermostat knows that you're away, so it self-adjusts for the temperature and all of that. But for the industry, for smart factories and all of that, it's a lot more critical than just convenience. For them, it's the difference between a machine failing and nobody knowing about it and not being able to fix it because they don't know exactly which machine it was that failed or what caused that failure, to where they can kind of predict that specific failure is going to happen, and they can schedule a regular maintenance and go in and fix it. So that is actually, it becomes a lot more critical when you think about it from the industry's perspective as compared to a regular consumer.
Yeah, because they're so massive, manufacturing plants. Yeah. Okay, great. Love it. So between the two of you, so whoever wants to go first, if you're going to give advice to an entrepreneur or an aspirational entrepreneur thinking, where you work, hey, I think I want to do this. What would be, I guess, the things that you thought you didn't think would be great and they ended up being great, and the things that you thought you never thought of and you hit them, you're like, whoa, I wish somebody would have warned me about this?
So just in general, one thing I've learned so far is that I've heard from a lot of people that they want to have their own startup because they want to do what they like to do. They don't want to be bossed around or told what to do and all of that. And what I've learned so far is that sure, maybe you'll get to do what you like to do. For sure, you will get to do what you want to do. But you also have to do a lot of other things that you may not have thought of or may not specifically love to do. And so that's something to keep in mind, is that when it's your company, when it's your baby, you got to take care of it. You got to, take care of everything that it needs done, and it depends on you, and its livelihood will depend on you. So it becomes a little bit less about you and more about what needs to get done. But from a personal experience perspective, I guess I would have to go back to the first point when we first started chatting, is that I really thought that I would need a lot more experience, and like Gursimiran was mentioning, more capital, and I would need to have my own idea and all of that to start my own company. And then as time goes on, I can see that a lot of that I can get very specific training for. And so I didn't necessarily need all of that to begin my journey. And I'm kind of glad that I didn't wait another 25 years before I dipped my toes into the entrepreneurship sea, I guess.
Me too.
I think, in my opinion, I think the whole journey of starting your own company sounds really daunting. And I failed twice, as I mentioned, trying to do that. It's daunting because there's so many moving parts. There's so many moving things. And you think that who is going to set the technology vision? Who's going to do the product vision? Who's going to hire people? Who's going to manage people? And so all of these things, when they're clumped together, they're basically like this bundle of chaos. And it can seem so daunting and beyond your control. But if you find a platform for yourself, or get the right amount of coaching, from the right sources, you can actually detangle. And that's what happened with both, I think, me and Artmiz. This is something I can speak for Artmiz for, is because we've shared this experience so much, is we both thought that this would be a daunting, challenging task. But the platform that TandemLaunch gave us to understand what a technology roadmap is, or what a venture pitch is, all these things, they sound extremely, extremely daunting. So what I would recommend anyone listening to this is, reach out to the right people and try to get that mentorship, because once you understand the language, I think things become much easier in your own head, and then they then become more of an execution thing that you have to do than something that you have to brainstorm or workshop over.
Great. Love it. Thank you. So just to wrap up, so I know you're going to be going on a fundraising expedition soon. So any investors listening, please do reach out and have a little conversation. But other than that, what else are you looking for from the community? Are you hiring, or what do you need? So what is your ask?
Yeah, we for sure want to grow our team. And for anyone listening, investors, excited entrepreneurs, engineers, anyone, technologists, you can reach us at team@latys.ca. And then you can also visit our website, latys.ca. That's LATYS.ca. Yes,
right there.
If you didn't notice, we've got it on our shirts.
T-shirts.
Yeah.
Yes. Great. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Artmiz and Gursimiran, for joining us and jamming about your startup and sharing your valuable insights to our community. And thank you very much to our loyal listeners. Your time is always appreciated. You can follow us on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Don't forget, if you have a technical background and you want to create your own startup, hit me up on LinkedIn and I can tell you all about the incredible opportunities at TandemLaunch. Thank you for listening. We hope you had fun and gained valuable insights. Why don't you subscribe to the Launch podcast today? You can share the podcast, tell a friend, and follow us on social media. If you have a research background in tech and always wanted to build your own startup, then check out our website, www.tandemlaunch.com, and get in touch today.